thank you so much for a very benevolent introduction. Ever since I walked into the hall, and people have been in tremendous appreciation of what I've been saying or not saying in the media overall. I feel that there is a conspiracy going on because, in Victorian or pre-Victorian England, you used to have these public beheadings. So maybe some people will very shortly, somewhere in central Calcutta, have a first public beheading ceremony, and you know whose head it's going to be. Now, you have made the mistake of calling an overqualified plumber to speak in Middleview, and that hazardous and that blemish of making that choice is entirely yours, not mine. Right. All my friends on this side of the dais, there are at times, when we stand amongst us as people, not as political party members, not as bees in some linguistic, social, ethnic, religious beehives, to take stock that what we have been doing over a period of time. If the world was 24 hours in age, which it is not, the world is about 8 billion years in age. Human beings, in the form that we know it, has been on the surface of this planet for about 120,000 years. So if you put our presence on Earth in a kind of 24-hour scale, then we have actually been inhabiting this planet for 5 minutes of one day. And out of the 120,000 years of human existence, you barely find records for 9,000 years. So what we have ourselves done for almost 90% of our existential time is completely unknown, unrecorded, undocumented in any form. The oldest language is about 8,000 years. The oldest religion is similarly about 8,500 years. That's what is our record. And even going a little bit behind that, you see, when we talk about how cuddly we are, how peace-loving we are, how gregarious we are actually, by biological genetic makeup, we are not very peace-loving at all. When you look at a cat, you will see there are about 50 different species of cat in the world. You look at a bird, how many different species of bird there are. You look at a Homo sapien. When we existed in the planet in the post-Neanderthal era, similar to us, there were about 14 similar species called Homo erectus, etc., etc. We managed to obliterate every single one of them. Not one comparable hominid exists on the planet apart from Homo sapiens. So, before you get completely deluged in this goodness and greatness sort of overdose, realize that from the very beginning, we were not very friendly, homely people. Few of us managed to survive. In some little village in Africa, we started traveling here and then, and here we are today. So that is the beginning of the human species. And we have brought upon, in 5 minutes of our existence on the planet, whatever trouble and whatever little glory that we could. Actually, it is a bit of a paradox that out of those 8,000-9,000 years that has been recorded in human history, if you look at the last 200 years, a little bit more than that, last 250 years, ever since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, we have actually fought the least number of wars. The last 200 odd years, the 2 centuries of human civilization, has actually on record, if you think peace is the absence of war. Now, have we been peaceful out of love? Have we been peaceful out of fear? Or have we been peaceful because the other man next door to us also has the guns, bullets, and the nuclear missiles? Has peace come spontaneously? Or has peace been entrusted on us? We do not know. Probably somebody somewhere will refer to the Ukraine conflict. Ukraine, when it was going through its schizophrenic phase, they used to have alternate prime ministers. One fellow used to be pro-Russia, the next guy used to be pro-NATO. They were playing tic-tac-toe, they played it a bit too often, they played it very dangerously, and they committed the cardinal error of getting rid of the last 20 nuclear warheads they had sometime in 2019. Otherwise, none of this Ukraine war would have ever happened. Such is the story of the world. Yes, we have relative peace. After the First World War of European hyper-nationalism, after the Second World War of once again a kind of revival of tsunami of European ambitions, the world seems to have been a relative peace and quiet considered what is to happen before. You've mentioned 1905. Paul Harris, the birth of Rotary. 1905, to a simple guy like me, a friend of mine who was one of your past district governors, inducted me as an honorary Rotarian in one of the Rotary meetings. And that is the only meeting I've come to so far. Right. When I was little, I used to think Rotary used to be a person. Because my father, who I lost very young, he was an industrialist. He was either in office or in Rotary. And I was dreadfully sure that the Rotary used to be a person who's always snatching my father away. And then I realized, no, actually it's a collection of people. So 1905, ladies and gentlemen, is the time when one of the first major political movements of independence happens in this country. In February, Paul Harris forms Rotary, and in July, Rabindranath Tagore hits the road for Bongo Bongo, because that was the year when Curzon came down with his draconian act of splitting our two people. That was, if you have to identify one period of time when we formalized the social, the religious division, which we have honestly never been able to put a sellotape over that division ever, then 1905 was the time. It's been 74 years. You have very rightly referred to the fact that there can be no peace without the basic needs of the people being identified. Very true. If you look at the times of the Roman Empire, the Byzantines, the Greeks, what have you, the Sumerians, you had either the warlords, the king, the emperors, or you had people, and people only had two jobs to do. They were either priests or soldiers. Priests lived a little bit longer, soldiers died very young. For almost a few thousand years, the average life expectancy of human beings on this planet did not move for more than 40 years. 40 years was all that an average person would live. You would either die of a pandemic, you would either die of disease, or you would have somebody's spear, bow, arrow, sword, some instrument stuck inside your chest or your belly. That used to be the fate of an average human being. Ever since the rules of production, ever since Adam Smith wrote his Wealth of Nations in 1776, the socio-economic structure of the world changed. And in that kind of a world, in 1947, we were born. Of course, we don't stand a chance compared to almost 250 years of United States, or 1,000-odd years of the British, since Oliver Cromwell marched into the Parliament riding on a horse. We are a young nation. And in this young nation, there are certain things we have achieved. Yes, We have managed to put about 40 crore people out of definitional poverty, not functional poverty. Definitional poverty. There are various definitions of poverty. I think this is the definition which goes by $1.10 a day or something like that. We have managed to vastly improve our public health indices. We are the only nation on the face of the planet where the maternal mortality, I see many ladies in the audience. Prior to 1950, the commonest reason why a woman would die of India is not an accident, is not a trauma, is not cancer, is not the heart, but a woman would die in India because she would bear a child. Pregnancy was the commonest cause of death. We had a prohibitive, if not a criminal rate of maternal mortality. We have vastly improved on that. Still, we have a long way to go. We have improved our life expectancy over a matter of 3 decades. Indian life expectancy, when we became independent in 1947, we had an average life expectancy of 45 years. In 74 years, we have improved it by 2 decades. Similarly, for life expectancy for both men and women. But still, we have miles and miles to cover. Today, I stand in front of you as a talkative doctor. Now, talkative is one half of it and the doctor is the other half. And it is the medical half of it which reminds me that falling sick, being ill in my country is still the commonest cause of indebtedness. The commonest cause of indebtedness is not because you have to marry off your doctor. It's complete misconception. The commonest cause of indebtedness in my country were still, for every 100 rupees spent on healthcare, about 60, it used to be 70 rupees before. It has now come down to about 50 rupees, 55 rupees, till 50% of healthcare comes out of pocket. So I am not only a cure for a disease, I am also, to a lot of people, the principal cause of their economic ruin and their economic indebtedness. Still, we have made a lot of progress, but every progress that we have made should remind us that what is the ground that is left to cover. No matter how much, I would a friend of mine who belongs to a political party. Since Jawahar is here, I won't tell him which party it is. Wherever you go in the city, you used to see G20, G20, G20. This fellow was traveling with me. Not many civilized people travel with me generally. And I told him, looking at this G20, that do you realize we are number 20 in G20 as far as the socio-economic indices are concerned? The fellow told me, how dare you say all these unpleasant things, now is the time to celebrate. I wasn't entirely sure what he was trying to celebrate. That is the point when you try to advertise without realizing the content of what you are trying to advertise yourself. So we still have a lot of ground to cover. And that should be a sordid reminder, because this is not just some, popular joke over here, but the fact that we have made progress in education should remind us that 20% of the Indian population still remains to be educated. Why have we stopped at 80% literacy for almost last 15 years? Have you got any questions to it? Have you got any answers to it? That why is it that difficult to educate the last 20% of our population? We've run from pillar to post and managed to shave off that 5% of out-of-pocket expenditure on health. Why? Why is it that difficult for us to more substantially get into public health care? Mind you, our state has done it to some extent. We are bearing the brunt of it as a healthcare industry. But that pain apart, there is an example. Some work has definitely been done. We should not fall into the COVID trap. When after the first wave of COVID, there was a monument, land was purchased in Delhi to buy a place for a victory monument to COVID. And as soon as before the last check was signed for the plot of land for the victory monument, the second wave came in. And that dream died premature. So I think that is a reminder, because we are grounded in the human sector. We are grounded in the socio-economic sector. And when we say that we have made some progress in health, in welfare, in maternal health, in infant health, it is not because of any political party, ladies and gentlemen. It is because of that woman, that healthcare worker, that primary health worker, that ASHA worker, who is still not acknowledged as a bona fide employee of the state. You and I would go home and throw some pittance to that girl, and that girl would be damn happy if they would earn some 2,000, 3,000 rupees a month. They are the backbone of Indian society. They are the ones who are visiting from house to house, village to village, to produce whatever little indices of respectability that India is producing today. We are not progressing because of our politicians. We are progressing in spite of them. And it is this political overindulgence. It is this political overindulgence. If India has one brake and one accelerator, the accelerator is the will, the accelerator is the conscience, the accelerator is the aspiration to succeed of the Indian people. And it is the overindulgence of political identity of India which is a serious break to its socio-economic aspirations. It's a serious problem. And in India is all as a one country, all everything together, barring 2 hours of the day, between 9 to 11 at night when prime time television comes on. Just look at the 6, 7, 8, 9 people over there. When the prime time television comes on, just look at your homes. Even the cats and dogs get scared. They run out of the house. And they will tell you, even we in our lifetimes have never quarreled like this. Do you ever get to see a consolidated face of Indian conscience with this kind of hyper-political identity that we are facing today? So to me, a very simple soul. What is Rotary? Rotary is a platform in which you exist as an individual with your feeling of right and wrong. Over here, you are not bound down by the identity of some orange identity, some green identity, some whatever identity. You do not subscribe to a party line. You keep your eyes and ears open. You identify what the society lacks. You go ahead and you devise ways and means of addressing those deficiencies of society. Me as a benefactor, me as a doctor, I am a benefactor of your benefaction. It is because of you. I think you mentioned the polio program. It is because of you when we begged and borrowed and we did 500 children heart operations with your Gift of Life program. Remember, even the government of India's head hung in shame by looking at the Rotary program, and a year after that, the National Children's Program came on, whereby the RSBK program was a direct derivative of the Rotary initiative to tell us that yes, this kind of a program can be supported by society. Before I take your leave, I will ask you to carry on the work of conscience we do. You have said, and very rightly so, service above self. If you were a politician, you would have added one more line to it, wealth above everything else. But you are not, and hence your slogan is still limited to that one line. Please don't venture into the second line. You may do it in some other avatar, in some other time. We remain deeply indebted to every help you have given us in the healthcare sector over the years. A few months ago in Kolkata, it was a couple of days, a couple of weeks before one of the Eid were going on, and one of the customary problems of our city, one community against the other, had fought. There was a lot of hush-hush going on in Kolkata. Disturbance had broken down. Police had really, tried their very best to calm down things a little bit. On the day of the Eid itself, when we reached out to a Hindu family, the heart of a Hindu woman on that night of the Eid, when a part of the city was in disturbance, was transplanted by us in a Muslim boy. In a week's time, that fellow who can't even have 2 square meals a day, just does some little pity knitting for an existence, is now back in his profession. And in order to make that possible, we had the benefaction of Rotary. I bow down in my indebtedness to all of you. Thank you.
Very much, Dr. Sarkar.